Hi, Magesh, and welcome to the Maestro Online.
Great, thanks for having me, Robin.
So, you're an incredible drummer and you've had amazing experiences in your life, but where did it all begin?
Well, it's a funny story because I was 14 playing bass in the high school band, and the drummer didn't turn up. And someone said, "Can you play the drums?" And I said, "Well, how hard can it be?" And I sat down. I just hit everything as hard as I could, as fast as I could. And they said, "That's your new thing. You're the drummer." So it was kind of by accident.
So, from there, did you then take lessons or were you self
So
taught?
no, so what I was kind of like half-hearted about it, and then my brother took me to see an Australian drummer called Virgil Donati, and Virgil's like a massive. He moved to the States in the '90s, and it became a really big deal. Phenomenal, phenomenal drummer, but I'd never seen anyone play like him before, and I can remember what it was. Called Super Clinic at the Camberwell Civic Centre in 1991, and he played. It was about 2,000 people, and he got a standing ovation. I'd never seen anything like that. And then after that, I wanted to practice like really seriously.
So, he inspired you.
Yeah, still to this day, he's a brilliant, brilliant musician.
So, did you actually take lessons or were you self
Yeah,
taught?
I took lessons for 10 years off an Australian drummer called Darren Ferrugia, he was playing on an Australian variety show called Hey Hey It's Saturday, which is kind of like the David Letterman band. It was a
Okay.
house band. So, and whenever big stars like Tom Jones or BB King would come to Australia, they would perform on this band with the house band. So Darren Ferrugia is a legendary Australian drummer, but I had lessons with him for 10 years, and then simultaneously for the last 2 years of that, I had lessons with another famous Australian drummer called John Corniola, and they were kind of the session guys. They were just really great drummers and great teachers as well. And in '95, I flew to America and I had one single drum lesson off a drummer called Jonathan Moffat, who had played with Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, Elton John, George Michael, Stevie Wonder, Babyface. And that was great because it was interesting for me because he was a self-taught player. And that just blew my mind because he had played with all these big pop stars, and he couldn't read a note of music. And I'm a very schooled musician. Like I went to music university. I had lessons for probably 10 years. So I'm very schooled. So it was interesting for me to see how he just played phenomenal.
Fabulous. So, you basically fell into drumming in the first place,
Yeah,
then you got inspired, then
yeah,
you had some amazing teachers, and as you say, you were schooled. At what
yeah.
point did this go from something that you loved and you were wanting to do professionally to really, what was your first break?
Well, it's kind of funny because I was just like fresh out of high school, and there was a guy who, my brother's a guitar player, and there was a guy who took guitar lessons off my brother, and he would come to their house, and I would be practicing drums. So I had met this guy, and he was like, "Oh, wow, this you sound great. How old are you?" And I said, "I'm still in high school." So I was probably like 16, 17 when he heard me play. And then just after I'd left high school, there was a band that was looking for a drummer. And he happened to be the guitar player. And he said, you should call this guy. I saw him about 2 years ago. He was really good. And they called me and I went down and auditioned and I got the job. So I was 19 and then we opened for the number one band in the country, which was mind blowing at that time, because I was fresh out of high school and then to play to a sold out crowd. It was at the Metro, it was maybe 2,000 people. That was a massive break for me.
Fabulous, fabulous. And then at what point did you go from this massive break to being able to play with some of the big names that you have played with?
Well, it was interesting because playing with that band was like they called us the B team. So essentially what happened was it was a backing band for singers. And they had an A team. They had the first band, and then if they couldn't do it, then we would get called in. And what happened was that was very sporadic. So I might do like a month of gigs and nothing for 6 months. So I was 19 at the time, but I was doing cover bands for years. I could tell you I was doing cover bands for probably 3 or 4 years. And then I started doing these original groups, which was linked to that group, the B band. And then what happened was I got a call and they said, "We want you to play with this singer, who was signed to Sony. She was an American singer coming to Australia, where I'm from, and that was Anastasia. And it was kind of funny because she had number one in Australia and a number one in France, but she wasn't well known in America at all. Because at that time, it was Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera. That was the main two big pop singers. So I got in good with Sony Music. The Sony rap music liked the way that I played. And just by doing that gig, we were talking a lot in the green room. There was a few TV shows we did. And then after that, I got booked I went from Anastasia, I think, to Ricky Martin, to another singer called Rona Bennett. She was on the Mickey Mouse Club with Justin Timberlake. And then I played with an Australian singer called Christian Alexander. We opened for Justin Timberlake. And then it went crazy after that. I think it was Nelly Furtado, Kelly Rowland from Destiny's Child. Who else was it? Delta Goodrem and Vanessa Amorosi, they were Australian number one singers. Kimbra, who was on that song by Gautier, who played this, they went on like number one in 26 countries. Vernon Reid from Living Colour, and Daniel Merriweather, who was another great, great singer. Yeah, but I can trace everything that I did back to that one gig. And I'll tell you what's funny, I initially turned it down because the money was bad. So I said, I don't want to do it. And it was a production company, and there was a new guy who worked there, and then he said, okay. And I said, I can't do it. The money's bad. And then I got called back like 10 minutes later, and it was a guy there that I knew, and he said, listen, if you do it, we'll keep you in the mix for everything else that comes up. Now, if you're a musician, you've heard that a million times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People say, oh, you do it for this, the money's not great, but I'll keep you on for that. And nothing happened. But I can trace everything that I did back to the first gig with Anastasia, which was, So if I never did that gig, I don't think a lot of these things would have happened.
And is that how you got to play with Rihanna as well?
Yes, everything came through. Oh, Chris Brown. Chris Brown was another one that I forgot. I did Rihanna and Chris Brown in 1 week. And I tell you what was interesting. I realized early that it wasn't just the drumming. Like my drumming style, like if it's TV and stuff, it's very flashy, a lot of stick twirling and all over the top things. But I realized early on that it was just, if you're touring and you're on the planes and airports and vans with people, the people that were doing well were the people that were just good, cool people to hang out with, you know? Yeah. And I realized that later on, I started getting called by Sony and Universal to book the band. So I was the MD, and I immediately could think of 10 guys who could play the guitar, but I'm thinking of 2 guys who I want to hang out with for a long period of time. You know what I mean?
The building relationships.
Right. Yeah, just having a good hang. Because, I mean, it's so crazy. We're doing TV. You're doing maybe on show for like 4 minutes, but you rehearsal the day before, then the whole day and the show and the sound check, you're together for probably like 15, 16 hours, you know? So it's got to be people who are cool and people that are good to hang out with. That was, for me, that was my thing. Obviously, they can play too, you know?
So out of all these things, or maybe it's not these things, what do you think is the favourite moment of your career to date?
Oh, I can tell you easily. Well, I was such a fan of the band Living Colour when I grew up. You know, I had Living Colour posters in my bedroom when I was 15 and 16. And I had a chance meeting with the guitar player in California in 2003. And he was at a bar, and I happened to be at the bar. And he walked up and ordered a drink, and he was right next to me. And I can't remember what I said, but I said something, and he laughed. I made him laugh. And I gave him my elevator pitch. I said, listen, I think I'm doing something different. I'm combining Indian hand drums and electronics with the drum kit. Can I send you something? And he said, sure. So he gave me his phone number, gave me his home address, and I sent it to him. And he sent back an email saying, hey, it's great. We should do something in the future. And that was 2003. And then in 2008, he sent me an email, and he was like, hey, how close is Australia to New Zealand? And I said, it's pretty close. And he said, I'm doing this guitar festival. And the bill was fantastic. It was Vernon Reid, Gilby Clarke from Guns N' Roses, Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple, Joe Satriani. It was an incredible lineup. Alex Skolniak as well. And he called me, said, you want to play drums? And for me, that was the best. As many pop stars I played with, I was such a fan of Living Colour, still am. So for him to ask me, and when he sent me that email, I looked at the email and I went through, I went to my mom's house the next day and went through a box of old stuff, and I found my high school diary and it had his picture on it.
Wow.
1993, I remember cutting it out from Guitar Player magazine, and 10 years later, he was writing an email saying he loved what I did and we should work together. So it was crazy, you know?
Absolutely. So, who do you
Yeah.
rate then as, for you, the most inspirational drummer in the world?
Well, probably I would say Virgil, because I saw him when I was 14 and he was a legend in Australia. Then he went to America, he made a lot of noise. There was Virgil and then Will Calhoun from Living Colour, because they were two guys that could do anything. They could play jazz, they could play funk, they could play theater shows, they could play with pop stars. And they were very schooled, very technical. But they played so many different styles of music. Like Will Calhoun from Living Colour, like he could play with Mos Def. Pardon me, he was a hip hop legend. Lauryn Hill, also sort of R&B. He played with Prince. He played with Mick Jagger. So he played with Pharoah Saunders, like jazz legends. Wayne Shorter, he was on the Wayne Shorter album. So for me, I always liked players who could just do lots of different things.
So,
You know, who technically there's versatility. Yeah, they could just change gigs. He played with it was so funny because I saw Will Calhoun play with Mike Stern when he came to Australia. You know Mike Stern, he played with Miles, the guitar player. And to see him play in a small little club and then to go see him play with Living Colour, it's two massively different things, you know? And very few drummers can play that dynamic to really switch gears from traditional straight-ahead jazz to playing rock and roll. So Virgil Donati and Will Calhoun were my favourite drummers, yeah, hands down.
So, if there was a younger drummer here who was inspired by your stories and was very keen to make it in the world as a drummer, and they were like, "Yeah, I want what Magesh has got," what advice would you give them?
I think for starters, it's just practice, and you have to work out what it is you want to do. But I would always say, practice the groove first, like really get your beats together before trying to do any flashy stuff and flashy fills around the drum set. And it was kind of funny, you know, when I grew up, my brother would practice guitar in the next room. He was a few years older than me. And when I started playing really choppy, flashy stuff around the kid, he would always bang on the door and say, shh, keep it down. You know what I mean? But I would play beats. Like I spent so much time on beats, and only later on, like I realized it was such an asset to be able to play beats, because that's what I was getting hired for. You know, like singers loved playing with me because I didn't play a lot of stuff. I just kept the time and I made it feel funky. So for any young drummer, I'd always say, just concentrate on playing beats, really good timing. And singers will fall in love with you. You know, I played for such a long time. I never had a singer say, can you play more fills or can you play flashy things around the drums? Never happened, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So let the singer blossom, really. Give them that
That's
space.
it. Yeah. And just remember, it's about the song. It's not about playing fancy fills. But if you have a good feel, people will always want to play with you. If that's a high school band or a rock band, a cover band, or with a famous pop star, if you have a really good beat and a really good feel, people will always want to play with you.
And do you have any advice on how to practice? Because that's a really big topic, I think.
Yeah, that's good. You know what? I would say play with a metronome or a drum machine or a sampler, or something that has just time, like perfect time. But also don't underestimate just putting headphones on and playing along with live drummers, whatever your favorite bands are. And try and be versatile, you know, be able to play a rock beat, a funk beat, a shuffle, a jazz beat. But yeah, that's it. So when you practice, I would always practice technical stuff, and then I would put on headphones and play along to my favorite bands. And I think that's such a massive part of it, because that's how you learn about feel. You know, you won't learn from feel from a metronome or playing along with a drum machine. Like if I listen to, you know, who's great, really underrated drummers, and I can't remember his name, it's escaping me, but the drummer for Huey Lewis and the News. And everything that he plays, he never plays anything fast or fancy, but all the songs that he plays, the beats are so solid and tight, you know. But he'll play something that's funky, like if you listen to like Hip to Be Square, it's kind of an R&B rock funk feel, and then Stuck With You is a shuffle and it goes into a halftime shuffle. But they're absolutely perfect. You know, and this is way before Pro Tools. This was guys in the studio playing it from start to finish, and it's absolutely perfect. So I would say practice with a metronome, but also practice along with records for your favorite bands.
It is so awesome to have you on the Maestro Online. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.